Alright, everybody. Found Footage Friday, even though this is gonna get fucked up like usual. Like, my internet, my Wi Fi has been down for hours all afternoon, so I don't know what's going on with it. I have a guy coming to check the Wi Fi on Sunday, so I hope it starts working before that so I can get these up. If not, hopefully Sunday it'll be fixed. But then I'm busy Monday and Tuesday, so these will get up eventually. Just hopefully like this weekend, so I can still use my self-tape Saturday or Sunday bullshit for whenever Found Footage Friday goes past Friday. But talking about 1999's The Blair Witch Project, directed by Eduardo Sanchez, and the hell's the other guy's name? Merrick, right? Daniel Merrick. I never remember his name. I always remember Ed Sanchez when it comes to this film. So, right off the bat, I'm going to be completely honest, like I always am with my feelings on films in this genre or any other genre. I don't care for this movie. I've never cared for the Blair Witch Project. It's never done really anything for me. Like the film itself. This is one of those rare movies that everything else about the movie I think is brilliant. The whole lore and mythos that they create of the Blair Witch, the making of this movie, the cultural phenomena that it was when it came out, the acting in this movie, just like everything about this movie except for the actual content of the movie, like fascinates me. And there's no denying how big of a classic this movie is, and that the impact it had on the whole found footage genre that we know today as it is, and just for low budget independent movies. Like they filmed this on $60,000 budget, I'm pretty sure, and it went on to gross an insane amount of money. Like this is a movie that I feel is hard to talk about without like talking about the making of and the marketing campaign, and maybe most importantly like your personal experience, like seeing all of this happen around you, like the hype for this movie. So, excuse me, when I first saw this movie, this was over 20 years ago, so 11 years old, 12 at the most, pretty sure like 11. And like I've said on the channel, I started getting into horror when I was 5, 6 years old with Halloween and Friday the 13th and everything. So by 11, I was pretty much like a horror fanatic. And I had a friend of mine whose brother worked in a movie theater near us, and he was a horror fan too, but not like a huge horror fan. And the brother actually ended up helping us sneak into the theater to see this movie because I heard about it, just like everybody else kept hearing, that this is actual found footage about 3 documentarians who went into the woods to research this Blair Witch legend and just never came back. And their footage was found a year later. So I saw this movie right around when it first came out. Like, I'm trying to remember even if they had credits at the end of the movie, or if I'm just remembering people from like, what festival did they play this at? No, it wasn't Cannes. I don't know, but they played it at some festival, and then they only premiered it like in New York and in LA. And I remember reading that there were no credits at the end. So just to sell that whole thing of it being actual found footage, like some more. So I don't remember if there were credits when I saw it. I don't remember there being, but like I said, it could be me mixing my past experience, memories with that whole information that I read, and then just mixing it up. But even as an 11-year-old kid, when I saw this movie, I thought it could possibly be real. Like the way they were advertising it and everything all over the internet with police reports and missing posters that they put up all over the place for the 3 actors, and the whole marketing for this movie was absolutely brilliant. Like you can't deny that. Like it absolutely amazing what they did to really push this movie out and to make people believe that this is actual found footage. Like I'm trying to remember like the statistics of people who thought it was real. Like I remember them saying it back in the day, like, but it was high. It was something like over a quarter of the people at least like thought it was real footage. And like as the movie went on and stuff, and like I started noticing like certain things, and then eventually you just get to the point like there's no fucking way this is real. Like absolutely a movie. But a lot of people were convinced of that, which doesn't play into like anybody being stupid for believing it, or like this is the way they marketed this movie. Which, looking back on, I think is where most people can give other people shit and say like, "Oh, you thought this was real? Like, seriously, come on." This was like the first movie to come out with a marketing campaign like that, like the first one. Like we had Cannibal Holocaust in the '80s that had Diodato get brought up on murder charges because he did a similar thing by having the actors and actresses not make public appearance and everything after the movie. But this was different. This was like a viral campaign that had everybody talking about this movie, and then had the two documentaries that they released before the movie released. The Curse of the Blair Witch, and I don't remember the other one. I think it had to do with like Russ and Parr or something like that. But just the marketing for this movie was something you've never seen before. So for people to go in and actually believe this was real isn't too far-fetched from like what you would think today with like the millions of found footage movies we have, and we've heard that trick a million times now by this point, that obviously nobody's going to go into thinking that any of these movies are real. But at the time, and like without like real like widespread internet and everything, definitely was the case for a lot of people. And I remember watching this movie until the end, and it was fun. Like I didn't dislike it, and I didn't love it. It was fine. And then after a few rewatches and the sequel coming out and everything like that, is when I kind of just settled on my, yeah, this movie doesn't do much for me at all. And it doesn't. like I said, there's a lot of things in this movie I really like, or love even. But just the movie itself is just, I don't want to say boring, because that's the wrong word. But like pretty much close to boring. like for me. Like maybe it's just because I know how it ends, like I know how it all plays out, but that doesn't really make sense because you know that with most, like every movie that you rewatch. But I don't know, maybe just this movie just doesn't have replayability for me. Like maybe it all was just, hyped up and stuff with all the campaigning and stuff, that this was a real story and real footage and everything. And then once that all died down and people started realizing that was all bullshit, then I kind of just saw the movie for what it is. And like I said, there's a lot of great things in here, so let's talk about it. Just the making of with this movie is fascinating. Like, this was all pretty much improvised by Heather, Josh, and Mike. Like, they had a map of, like, certain locations they had to go to. So, like, a little outline of, all right, you're here, you gotta go over here next, and then you have to go over this location, etc. And, like, a nice little outline of like little points that have to get touched on and stuff like that in the dialogue. Besides that, it's all improvised, which is fucking unreal to me that these three young actors were able to improvise so well under the conditions that this film was being made under. Like they had no idea of any of the nighttime events that were going to happen to them in this movie. And they purposely put them on edge like crazy, the directors. Like they would give them less food and water as each day went on, as they were shooting, to make them more uneasy and make them more just able to snap, basically. Like they really got pushed to the limit making this movie. And you can tell, like just with like the acting alone. And that's one thing I will never shit on this movie for. Like, I don't shit on movies really to begin with, unless it's like a completely irredeemably bad movie. But I've heard a lot of people over the years, when talking about this movie, that says it's just trash, and that the acting's garbage, and it's just people arguing and screaming. Yeah, but the acting is not garbage. The acting is fucking great in this movie. Like, great to excellent. depending on the situation and stuff. But for the most part, especially with Heather's performance, it's excellent. Excellent in this movie. Just the way that they were able to, like Eduardo Sanchez and Merrick, were able to capture the three of these kids' terror and not knowing any idea of what's going on around them or what's going to happen to them as they continue filming this movie is unreal. Like, you can tell how terrified they are. Like, in certain scenes, you can really tell that they are scared. And I don't know what the fuck's up with my voice, man. I don't know if it's the fucking heat in this room. I keep saying it's killing me. But some of the acting in this movie is just really, really well done. Most of it. Like, even when they're arguing and stuff, and like arguing over the map for fucking like 35 minutes. Like, it's not that long. I don't know how long it is, but just the acting is very genuine. Like, they feel like actual people. Like, they don't feel like actors. They don't feel like characters. Like, when it comes to the characters, I really don't care for Heather's character. I don't really care for Josh's character. Mike, I really like Mike. Maybe because I can relate to him the most, like the way that he handles this situation. I mean, not kicking the fucking map in a creek, that's fucking insane. But just his whole, like, personality and, like, take towards everything that's happening to them. I don't know, I feel like I relate to Mike more than anybody in this movie. But just because I don't care for the characters of Heather and Josh doesn't mean I can't say that their performances are excellent in this movie. Because they are. Especially the whole iconic scene with Heather with the camera too close, which, what a fucking iconic scene, man, for a take that was fucking wrong. Like, she was not supposed to be zoomed in on her face like that. Like, it was supposed to be zoomed down a lot further and just be a regular shot. And she ended up, when she turned the camera on, she didn't check the distance that the camera was zoomed in. And she just started doing that take. And it came out so well. And the acting is so fucking good in that whole little scene. That imagine afterwards, like, looking at it and being like, oh, fuck. Like, I completely fucked this whole take up. It was so good and everything. And then, like, that becomes, like, one of the most iconic scenes in horror after this. Like, I can't watch this scene nowadays without thinking of, like, the Scary Movie parodies, and so many parodies you've seen over the years with, like, snot coming out of her nose and everything like that. Like, I just can't watch that scene without thinking about any of that. But the acting is excellent by Heather in that. Like, such a great scene, and I just always thought that's so interesting that turned out being such a happy accident, that they were able to take that shot that wasn't even supposed to be, and it became the most iconic scene in this movie, pretty much. Like, that's absolutely incredible. But then let's talk about the movie itself. I don't want to keep going on with background stuff, but in a way it pads this video a little bit because I don't have that much to say about the movie itself. But like the interviews in the beginning, like with they were paid actors. The crew didn't know any of this, so all their reactions from the people they were interviewing, is pretty much genuine, completely genuine. Like, and they did a lot of stuff like this. And then we get the whole history on Rustin Parr and how he took 7 children up into his house in the woods, and he would have one face the corner and have the other one, kill that one, and then have the other one come out of the corner and kill him. So, like, we get the whole history of that, which I love the whole lore behind that. And we get that little interview with the kid that keeps covering his mother's face and stuff. That's pretty funny. Every time I watch that, I laugh a little. And this is a movie I've given so many chances. I've just watched this movie at least a dozen times in the last 20 years. It just doesn't do it for me, man. Like, I don't know. Like I always say on this channel, I'll never say that a movie's bad or terrible or it sucks or I hate it or anything like that, because none of that applies to this movie for me at all. Like I always say, if you can find just a few things about a movie that you can take away that are good from it, it wasn't a bad movie. Like, you didn't hate the movie didn't suck. Like, it still had things good about it. And this movie does have some great things about it. The two fishermen and stuff, their banter back and forth, like their interviews with the two fishermen people, the one who's like an older drunk guy and the other one who's a younger complete skeptic, and him, just their banter back and forth, and them trying to explain things that have happened in the town in the past, and then the old guy saying that he saw like mist over the water and everything when he was fishing, and his banter of like, I wasn't drinking that day and everything. It's really cool stuff. And then Mary Brown and stuff, which she actually, I believe, like did like costume work or like costume design for the movie. Like she was another paid actress, and she is creepy as shit, man. Like Mary Brown is one creepy fucking character. But like her whole story about the Blair Witch and seeing this like furry woman, how she describes her, is like she has fur all over her body and her arms and legs and everything like that. Like it sounds like Bigfoot to me, but apparently it goes by a different name in Burkittsville, Maryland. Then after, and the thing that's so important about the interviews at the beginning is that this movie, without them, wouldn't have worked at all. Like not one bit. Like this movie needed the interviews in the beginning and the like first few shots and scenes of their documentary, everything about Coffin Rock and how the five guys were killed there, intestines were pulled out and they were put in the shape of a pentagram, and the whole thing with Rustin Parr and his whole story, and then Nellie Kedward and the history on her, and just all of that had to be there in order for the rest of the film to work. Because if we just opened up with these kids going into the woods and we had no context or backstory or anything, then we don't know what the hell's going on. Like the interviews and everything set that lore, set that mythos up. So that way when we see the stick figures or we see the pile of rocks or we see anything that we do see, we have those interviews in our mind that are already asking questions, like instinctively, that are just saying, all right, well, Rustin Parr, we know this crazy guy killed these kids, and why, we don't know, but then Ellie Kedward, she's a witch apparently, but she's furry, and fucking, like, all these things are creating questions in your mind. So as the movie goes on, and all the weird shit starts happening to these three people, your mind could start connecting the dots. Without any of that, this movie would not have done nearly as well as it did. I can guarantee that. Like this movie did so well with making the backstory up and making the lore of the witch and just the whole mystery around it and the legend and everything. They did such a great job with that I think that's a huge role in what made this such a big movie and into a franchise. Was that the lore was so well written and that it made it feel real, which goes back to my whole point of their whole, campaign, marketing and everything that they did for this movie, is that they had such strong lore and mystery and legend that they created that it sucks people in, and it absolutely does. Like really great stuff. Then I'll just go through the rest of this quick because the movie, like I said, doesn't do much for me. And we get the noises and the rocks and everything, the rock piles, which is cool. I mean, my biggest complaint with this movie is just that nothing happens. Like, in which I've said on this channel with found footage movies many times in the past, that's one of people's biggest complaints about found footage, is that it's just shaky cameras and people arguing and yelling and screaming and why are you still filming, and nothing happens in the end. Which, that basically is what happens in this movie. Like, it's not like, that's not the whole case here. So I can absolutely understand people who don't care for this movie at all, or don't care for the genre at all, which I've said a few times on this channel, that it's a very love it or hate it genre, found footage. But this movie, I feel like, because it was, I'm not going to say the first, since the last broadcast came out like the year before that, but like the first major horror movie that was in a found footage setting, and in that type of structure and style. I don't know. I feel like it just worked so much better because of that. But if people, I feel like if you took the hype out of this movie and all the marketing, like I said, how they portrayed it, and put like 30 found footage movies like in the few years before this, it wouldn't have been the huge hit that it was. And again, that's just my opinion, but I feel like if we've seen this before many times before this movie came out, like in the mid to late 90s, and then this came out and it didn't have any of the lore or anything attached to it. It was just kids going out looking for some witch in the woods of Maryland, and they die at the end. I feel like it would just be another found footage movie at that point. But there are some cool things throughout, and most of it relates to the acting, because it's all three of these people in the woods, and that's basically what we get. So this whole movie had to rely on their ability to act and to improvise, and to be able to genuinely act scared of all the things that the crew and stuff were doing to them, which it's a great way of making a movie. Like, you get genuine reactions, and like when they go out and they see the rock piles and everything. Sure, they knew that somebody set them up, but the way that they still handle like the reactions of like discovering them and everything is very well done, like throughout most of this movie. And then we have them arguing about the map, which goes on fucking forever, and even though it does, and I can't stand that about this movie, just the arguing that goes on, it's still great acting. Like, they're still acting very, very well and very, very realistic. Because, yeah, you're going to be arguing like that. You're going to be ready to lose your mind after like 3, 4, 5 days in the woods. And time and reality starts distorting all around you. So, of course you're going to be at each other's throats. It just doesn't do much for me. Like, I don't know any other way to say it. But then, like, when Mike calls out this voodoo shit over here, and then they go and they get all the close-ups of the stick figures hanging from the trees and everything, that's a cool scene. Really cool stuff. And like I said, see, like, a lot of these things that I do like about this movie play into the whole mythos and legend of the Blair Witch and the whole lore that they created for this movie. Like, very, very well done. And who could sleep like that each night as shit keeps going crazier and crazier? Like, I have trouble sleeping just in a bed. Like, inside in fucking safety. Being outside in the woods and then having all this shit happen to you. Like, hearing all these cackling noises and then hearing children later on and finding these things outside your tent, the rock piles and the stick men and everything like that. Who can fucking sleep normally? Like, Heather even says she sleeps like a rock. Apparently not in this movie, because she's up every fucking night. And then we get the whole little tent attack scene, which that's a tense scene. Not a tent scene, it's a tense scene. About a tent. But like, it is very tense the way that they shoot that and stuff, and they had no idea that was going to happen. Just some crew member came up to the tent and started shaking it wildly while they were sleeping, and they just got up and fucking booked it out of there. And then we get the shot that we were supposed to get that we never got, when they were supposed to be somebody dressed up as the witch or like something. There was supposed to be someone dressed up in a costume, and when Heather's running and stuff, she's like, what the fuck is that, what the fuck is that? And she turns the camera. It was supposed to get that shot of this figure, but she missed. And then they didn't retake it or anything. So that's the shot that we never got. But I always wondered what it was going to look like. If it was going to be the witch, or it was just going to be some other weird thing. I really like the whole conversation between Josh and Heather about her, Josh saying to her, like, I get why you like this camera so much and everything, why you keep filming. And then he starts saying that it's like a filtered reality, that it's like a buffer zone between you and reality. I love that whole conversation, because that is true to a point. I have a friend or two that are, filmmakers or photographers, And I've heard them describe it the exact same way. Like, so that it's like a filtered reality. That you get to see your own version of things, not exactly how reality is outside of that frame, which is interesting, and it's a really cool exchange of dialogue between them. Then we have Josh's whole breakdown and stuff, like he doesn't want to be on camera. And you have Mike and Heather that are talking, and like just the way that Mike is through this whole movie, like when they hear the noises and stuff, like the second night or something like that, and Heather says to him, "Get the dad and like come down with me," and he's like, "I'm not going down there, fucking." Like, if you see my channel enough, you know I'm skeptic, but just to a point. That like just in case I'm not fucking doing that or going there or saying these words or anything like that. Are you kidding me? But like his whole thing of saying that like if these are people following us, they're fucking crazy locals. I don't want anything to do with that. And like if they aren't people, then I don't want anything to do with that either. Like his whole like personality through this movie and the way he looks at things logically, I agree 100%. Like again, I don't agree with kicking the fucking map into the water, but was that the Blair Witch that made him do that, or the woods? Since in this series it's kind of debated whether it's the actual witch or the woods themselves, which I'm pretty sure it's just the woods after rewatching the third movie. Then them getting back to the same log that they were at like the 24 hours before that sucks. Like that sucks so bad, man. Like I've said that many times. That's another fear of mine. It's just being lost somewhere that you have no idea where you are. And being lost in the woods like that. That's why you never see my ass go camping. How many times have I gone camping? 0. You know why? Because of shit like this. I ain't getting stuck in the woods. Fuck you. Fucking witch, you go find your own other victims. I'm not getting stuck out there. Just for situations like this. Of not a witch fucking taking over there, but like just getting lost. And walking for a whole day. Following a map. Just to find out that you're back in the same fucking spot. That's fucked up. Like, that's so evil to do to somebody. Especially like with all the backpacks and shit that they're carrying. And they go through a whole day's walk. Going, I think they were going south. This is after the map was kicked in, right? So them just following the compass south the whole time. And ending up back where they started. Dude, that sucks so much. And then we get our Josh! Gotta love Josh, man. So he's gone. He just fucking disappears after getting like that blue jelly shit on all of his stuff like the night before, which I'm surprised with all the documentation that Heather's doing in this movie that she doesn't choose to document that shit. Like, we don't ever see this blue oozy stuff that's supposedly all over Josh's, all his equipment and everything and his clothes. We don't see any of that. So, I don't know why they decided not to shoot like that very vital information, like, or that footage that like people would really like to examine and see what that is, but they don't shoot it. And then Josh disappears. Then they hear him screaming at night and everything. And then the next day, Heather finds the bundle of sticks, right? That's like bound in Josh's shirt or something, like a piece of his clothes. And she opens it up and she finds a little bag with a bloody tooth and hair and everything like that. Why doesn't she tell Mike? Like, I've never understood that. Like, why doesn't she tell Mike about that? Like, don't you think that's something, like, very, very important to tell the only other person left in the world that you're there with in the middle of these woods for days and you're starving and you're exhausted and you just want to get out of there and your friend's missing and now you find a bag full of fucking with blood and a tooth of his and hair and stuff like that and nothing? Like, you don't want to tell anybody this. And she's so visibly fucking shook after that when Mike is like asking her, are you okay and everything, and she's like, yeah, no, I'm fine and stuff like that. Bitch is obviously not fine. Like, come on, you spend days in the woods with this girl. You can't tell that she's not okay. You can't tell that some shit just went down. Like, seriously, Mike, come on. I love you, boy, but you gotta get a little smarter because she is obviously not okay. Like, something absolutely happened. And he doesn't ask and just gives up, I don't know, right away. And we get the whole ending, which is a cool ending. Like I said, like, for the rest of the shit going on in this movie, like, it's like, finally, something good. Something can happen, finally. But, and like I said, it's not like, none of this movie is bad to me. I don't dislike things strongly about this movie. It's just a movie I get nothing from watching. Is, I guess, the best way to put it. Like, it's not like I hate this movie, I despise this movie, I dislike this movie, even like not care for. It's just like I've seen it, I've given it its chances, I know what it involves, and I'll pass. Like, that's pretty much how it is. But the whole ending of them finding the house, then finding Josh, or thinking they found Josh, and running upstairs, then running throughout this creepy house, which is fucking weird that Mike is such a pussy throughout most of this, like not going and listening to the sounds and like saying that he fucking wants to get out of the woods more than anybody. Like, he's the last person that you think is going to go charging into this creepy ass house in the middle of the woods after like 4 or 5 days in those woods, starving, cold, alone, just with Heather after Josh left and everyone disappeared. And he just goes running into that house. I find that so hard to believe. But he goes into that house and then looks everywhere for Josh, and then Heather's following around her, and then we get down to the basement with Heather, and we see Mike standing in the corner, just like Russ and Parr did to the children, and she gets knocked out, and her camera falls, and she's presumed dead. So that's the whole ending with this movie. It's a good ending. Like I said, I've seen it so many times, I know what's going to happen. So maybe that also just takes enjoyment of it out of the way for me. I don't know. But like, all in all, and I could just see like fucking downvotes like crazy for not loving the Blair Witch Project. Like I said, in summary, I love most things about this movie. Most things that surround this movie. Most things that are injected into this movie. I just don't love this movie. Like, I just don't. It does nothing for me. And it never has. And it probably never will. Because this is over a dozen rewatches for this movie for me. And same opinion after this rewatch. Like, same as any other time. Like, it's fine. And that's pretty much it. But now we can move on to Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, or Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, which right off the bat, what a fucking stupid name that is. But that is one of my favorite sequels and just one of my most watched films in general. But I will save that for that video. So Blair Witch Project 1999, and I'll see you with Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, whenever I can get these up, which I hope is sooner than later. Alright guys, take care.